Hello everybody. In this video, we will look into the RenderProps pattern and discover how we can use it to avoid code duplication. So we have a basic example in which we are rendering three different kinds of toggle components. The first one is a text variant where we are just rendering a text. The other one is a button variant in which we are rendering a button with a different kind of emoji. And the third one is the material UI toggle component. So let's have a look at the code. We have a basic React app, and the app component is just rendering all of these three different components. I have added a necessary styling in the app.css to just center the whole content. So let's take a look at the first component, that is the text toggle. It's a simple component. The base element is div, and we are rendering either on or off based on the is toggled state. The second one is the button toggle. The base element is button, and we are rendering different kind of emoji based on the is toggled state. And third one is the material UI switch component. So the core problem here is that we have duplicated the toggling behavior in all of these three components. So every component defined its own state for the is toggled and define a utility function toggle component, which is basically toggling the is toggled state. So the idea here is that we want to remove the code duplication from all of these three components. The primary reason why this code duplication occurs is because every component is handling two kind of responsibilities. The first one is the toggling behavior, like the text toggle is handling the responsibility to toggle the component, and the second responsibility is that it's rendering a UI based on its state. This same goes for the button toggle. It has it is currently handling two kind of responsibility. The first one is the toggling behavior, and the second one is rendering a UI. So what we need to do is to separate these two responsibilities, and we want to delegate the toggling behavior to another component. So that's where the RenderProps comes in, and what RenderProps let us do is to define a parent component, and the parent component is responsible for handling all the behaviors. So what we will do here is that we will create a new component. Let's name it toggleprovider.js. And the idea here is that we need to copy the toggling behavior into a toggle provider, and we need to we need to delegate the logic to the children component. So the way to do it is to call the children as a function and pass the function any arguments you want. So we want to send the is toggled state and the toggle utility function. With that being set up, we now have a parent component that is responsible for handling the behaviors, and it's delegating its rendering logic to the children components. So what we need to do in the children component is that we need to remove the the toggling behavior, and it's going to receive the is toggled state and the toggle utility function as a prop, and it's just responsible for rendering the UI. So here the button toggle is just responsible for rendering the button and the emoji based on the is toggled state. Same goes for the text toggle. Now it's not responsible for the toggling behavior, so we can remove this code, and it's going to receive the is toggled state and the toggle utility function as a prop, and render the text based on the is toggled property. Same goes for the material UI. We can remove this code and define the props. So if we go to the application, and if you click on any of the component, then it's going to throw an error because the toggle component is undefined here, because we haven't sent any function to the app component. So we need to have a way to basically pass down the function that we added in the toggle provider to the children components. So what we have done so far is that we have created a parent component, a toggle provider whose responsibility is to handle the toggling behavior, and it's delegating the rendering logic to its children. And we have defined three different kind of childrens, which are just rendering different UI based on their props. So what we need to do now is to compose these two together to achieve the final results. So how can we do that? We just go to the app component and define the toggle provider, and so we will pass a function which will return the GSX. In the core part is that these attributes, the toggle component utility function and the isToggle attribute, is now available to us in this function. So we can just get them from here and pass it down to the text toggle component. With that being set up, we now have working text toggle as before. So we need to add the same logic the rest of the toggle components. So let's copy paste some code and rename this to button toggle and material UI toggle. With that being set up, we now have the same working example as before, but we have removed the code duplication from each of the component. So let's repeat what we did so far. The main problem, the core problem that we had earlier is that we had the toggling behavior being duplicated in all of the children components, in all of the variants of the toggles. So what we decided to do is that we need to have a parent component that is responsible for handling the toggling behavior, and each of the children variant, that is the, in our case it's the text toggle, the button toggle and the material UI toggle, all of these three childrens are just responsible for rendering the UI. So we just extracted out the toggling behavior from the children components all the way to the toggle provider, and toggle provider as a parent is just responsible for handling the toggling behavior, and it's delegating the rendering logic to the children components. So this way we have resolved our first problem, and the next thing that we will be looking into the part 2 of this video is that how we can replace these three kind of variants with the Plasmic designed component. So eventually what we will be doing is like we will receive these two properties in the Plasmic component, and we will just pass down it to the Plasmic provided component, and we will render three different variants in the Plasmic Studio.